Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all here this morning to this next in the series of our Circular Glasgow webinars. It's great to see some familiar faces. I can see looking back at me just now, but also some new ones. It's great to have you all with us, particularly given that it's such a nice morning. I'm glad that you're all here and not out the back sitting pretending to work. So welcome, everyone. So as I said, delighted to join you all to join us on our next webinar, which is looking at creating a circular workplace. So I'll just pop our slides on just now. But just for those of you who don't know me, my name's Cheryl McCulloch. So I am the Senior Project Manager at Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. And just in terms of some of the kind of practical logistical points this morning, before I forget to say to you, we are recording this webinar because I know there's a few people who couldn't join that we're really keen to see after. So just to let you all know that. The webinar will run for an hour and finish at 11. And we're also asking for our participants and delegates to use the chat function if you do have any questions. So please do use that. If you have any questions of any of our speakers, please pop the questions in there and we'll try and endeavour to come back to them throughout the webinar. So that's there for you. So the webinar this morning is fairly packed, but we'll get through it. So firstly, we'll hear from Zero Waste Scotland, from Spella and Claire, who will tell you a bit about their ProCirc initiative and some of the circular office work that they're carrying out. We'll also have some case studies. We're delighted to be joined by London Waste and Recycling Board's Jessica Brodrick and by Jacobs Joe Jeffries, and they'll share a bit about their experience in terms of looking at more of a circular workplace. We'll have some top tips and then we'll have some questions and discussions. So firstly, I suppose, just a bit of context about, I suppose, who we are and what Circular Glasgow is. So we very much at Circular Glasgow have a vision to establish Glasgow as a leading circular city. Glasgow Chamber of Commerce has been working in the circular economy space for probably around 4 or 5 years. And it's very much something that we want to see. You know, Glasgow has a great reputation for, I suppose, regeneration, for innovation, and it's all about, therefore, how we can build on that and help, you know, really establish Glasgow to become that leading city for circularity, both through the sort of business community, but also at a wider city level. Some of you may not be as familiar with what the circular economy is. I think it's something that quite a lot of people are maybe hearing about, some are talking about, some are maybe quite unfamiliar with it. But the circular economy, in a very simple sense, as I know that we'll hear a bit more about this as we go throughout, and I know that particularly Spella and Claire will speak a bit more about this, but for us, we try and keep it very simple. You know, we very much think of it as it's enough for everyone, forever. And I think that says it really simply, but it's a really easy way to think about it. It's about how we can use our resources and everything in a simple way for enough for everyone forever. And that's actually a picture from something that we did back in St Square last year. So it's a really nice reminder of when we used to all be able to get together in person rather than via Zooms. So our activity is very much around partnership working, and we're delighted to be joined by some of our partners today. So as I've said, we're part of Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. We work really closely with Zero Waste Scotland, who are our partners and funders for some of our activity through our ERDF. We're also delighted to partner with Circular Economy, who are experts based in the Netherlands, and of course with Glasgow City Council. And I think Colin's joined the call today, so great to see him join us. So it's very much for us a coalition of the willing and real collaborative work in the city. And I'm actually delighted that Jess joins us today to share London's experiences, because we're delighted to really be working a bit more in partnership with London as well, in terms of what they're doing and feeling all the best things that they've done for Glasgow. So as I say, it's very much a coalition of the willing, and it's very much for us been about how we can really drive some business activity. That's what we want to do. We want to see businesses act and look at how they can adopt those first steps. And the workplace is a really good way for us to start. I think that as businesses are starting to think about how things may reopen in terms of a workplace, whether that's an office space environment, or more retail or manufacturing. We all have things to think about, but we can actually use circularity as a way to try and adopt and actually help innovate. And the circular economy is a $4.5 trillion opportunity for business. So there is some real opportunity there. And even in light of the pandemic, I think that there's some ways to try and implement circular practices. But hopefully you'll hear this morning that can help businesses as they move to new measures in the workplace. So on that note, I think I've probably said enough, and I'd like to hand over now to Spell It and Claire. I haven't went into a huge amount of detail about us because I wanted to put this link up. It's the Circular Glasgow story. So that's the link there. You can find out more about who we are and what we do, and please come and speak to us after it to help you take that first step. But without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Claire and to Spell.
Hello, hi. Just moving up, okay. Hi, I'm Claire Guerin, and so Spella will speak to you as well. And we're both involved in a European funded project as well through Interreg North Sea region called ProCirc, which is really focusing on how do we buy circular, looking at the how-to, the challenges and opportunities, and supporting practical pilots to demonstrate how it is possible. So it's very much a collaborative approach. We're one of 11 partners in 6 countries. You can see the countries on the map. They correspond with the North Sea region. This is the Interreg North Sea region part-funded project. We have certain target sectors we're focusing on. These were chosen because they represent the greatest opportunities from buying circular in terms of carbon savings, waste savings, and savings on use of virgin raw materials. So construction and infrastructure is an area of focus for us. But thinking about today's talk, which is around the circular office, a lot of the other product groupings that we're focusing on come under that. So furniture, IT equipment, textiles such as uniforms, fixtures and fittings like blinds, curtains, carpets, etc. And single-use items, so reducing plastic and looking at opportunities there to use reusable items. Over on the sort of right hand of the screen is all the list of all the different partners that we work with, and what we're finding is it's a fantastic opportunity for knowledge exchange and sharing. And quite recently, we've had some of our European partners co-presenting to pilots we're supporting here, or presenting at webinars as well, and sharing their experiences and knowledge. Just in brief, what are we working on? So there's 3 sort of principal areas that we're working on in Scotland. We're helping to support development of a toolkit of resources that people can use to help them how to procure, and that's been led by Circular Flanders, and we're pulling together, really reviewing what's out there and pulling together the most useful information for people to use as an online resource. That's work package 3. Work package 4 is pilots. So we're actually looking to test and improve how you buy circular in practice. So we're supporting both private sector organisations and public sector organisations, from local authorities through to central government, and also just in SMEs, tiny office-based SMEs as well. We're also involved in setting up and managing communities of practice as well, which is where this comes into play. I think, yeah, in terms of partnership working, this is where our partnership working with Circular Cities and Regions comes in. And our area of focus is really on the built environment, as that encompasses a lot of the product grouping areas we're looking to support. And we're working in partnership with both public and private organisations, as you can see there, to support a circular office initiative and also circular construction initiatives. And I will pass you over without further ado, as I'm conscious of time. to spell it on the next slide, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You've got control.
I do.
Oh, there you go, yes. Excellent.
There we are. Yeah, so as Claire mentioned, one of the work packages in ProCirc is around communities of practice and that sort of group learning, group knowledge sharing, which is where the Circular Office initiative comes in. And I'll just give you a brief background introduction into what it means when we speak about circularity in the office. There's a very sort of brief recap on when we speak about the shift from the linear to circular economy. Cheryl's already put it very nicely that, you know, simply put, the circular economy is where we have enough for everyone forever. But, you know, we are still mostly in the sort of linear economy system, which is essentially a bit of a conveyor belt of the take, make, waste process. And we're using a lot of virgin resources, and which, you know, we are making into products. Manufacturing is still quite centralized, and we're using these products, and we're more often than not disposing of them at the end of their use life, and they're ending up in the landfill, which is of course very unsustainable and wasteful as well. Recycling has been around for a long time. We're all very familiar with it, and while it does have a role and plays a role in the circular economy, we do essentially still end up with substantial volumes of waste, so it's still not ideal. We need to do better than that. We should be, you know, moving and shifting towards a circular economy model where we're maximising the values of the materials and the products that we produce and use, and we do that through reuse, repurposing, remanufacturing, and recycling as well, to minimise the waste output. So if we sort of keep that in mind and we think about what that means and why do we sort of talk about starting with the office space, and what the circular economy opportunities are in the office, there's some staggering statistics around waste produced in the offices. So that goes from, you know, how much it actually costs in the UK alone in terms of disposal of office waste. There's financial savings to be made in terms of the waste that we produce in the workplace per employee. And it's worth keeping in mind as well that space utilisation is not very good at the moment. So we need to be, you know, looking for ways to be using our offices much more efficiently than we are doing so just now. And this slide actually came from our collaboration with the business in the community, and they have a fantastic circular office guide, which I think we'll be able to share with you after the webinar as a resource. And it kind of describes, you know, where do we start thinking about the circularity in the workplace, to the different stages where these principles can be implemented in order to make the office less wasteful. So if we're thinking about the office design, it needs to be flexible and adaptable. And we're already, you know, we need to think about what happens with it once we're done using it right from the beginning. If we are building a new office or renovating an existing office, we need to ensure that the materials that we're using are responsibly sourced and the components will last a long time and can be repaired. Office use needs to be optimal, to be as efficient as possible, and that includes rethinking what we actually need in order to minimise the demand for resources. And if we are sort of, you know, at the end of the use of our office, so we're during the kind of disassembly stage, the materials and components need to be recovered so that they can be reused elsewhere or potentially even repurposed in other industries, again, to maximise their inherent value. The Circular Office as an initiative, as I mentioned, it came around from our collaboration with Business in the Community, one of our partners in the ProCirc project, and we have been sort of creating communities of practice across Scotland in different regions. And so far we've launched in Edinburgh, in Aberdeen, in Tayside, and obviously we're doing Glasgow today. And we're alongside this, we're also creating a LinkedIn group so that we can connect these clusters in a different way as well and bring them together. And the main aim is to bring businesses and organisations together to learn from each other and to share ideas on how to make our workplaces more circular and resource efficient. And we're about to hear from a couple of such examples today as well. So I'll hand you over back to Cheryl.
Thanks, Belle, and thanks, Claire. Really interested to hear about the ProCirc initiative and the communities of practice you're using to try and help create, I suppose, local communities of practice, I suppose, in each area around the office. And I think it's really helpful to have that context before I hand across to Jess Brodrick. Jess is from London Waste and Recycling Board and is one of the leads for Circular London, and she spearheaded the Circular London refit of the office to, I suppose, implement circular practices throughout. So Jess is here to share her story, how she did it, with the challenges and opportunities and some of the learnings from that project. So welcome, Jess, and we're delighted to have you with us here, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Let me check that the tech is working. There we go. Okay, so a very quick overview of who we are, and then I'll get onto the office project. So we're a partnership between the Mayor of London and the 33 London boroughs. We were set up about 12 years ago to try and reduce waste across the capital, to increase recycling rates, and more recently to support the transition to a circular economy. We do this through two programmes. So we have our Circular London programme, which focuses on kind of circular economy, supporting small businesses, trying to kind of do demonstration projects, pilot projects with larger businesses, facilitating collaboration, influencing policy, that kind of thing. And that's where our Advanced London programme sits, which works with circular SMEs, very similar to the programme that Zero Waste Scotland run. And we also have our Resource London team that focus more on supporting the boroughs and doing behaviour change campaigns for citizens and that kind of thing. So that's a little bit of a background to us. So in terms of our office setup, so when we were set up about 12 years ago, there were about maybe 5 people, and we were initially based out of City Hall in London. And as we've grown, we moved into the Fire Brigade headquarters, so London Fire Brigade headquarters, but we were kind of based within their office environment rather than having our own office. And then as we've grown more and more over the last few years, we felt like we really needed to have our own office to enable us to be able to host events, to be able to support small businesses with some kind of co-working space. And so really it was time for us to kind of branch out on our own, which then got us thinking about, okay, how do we do that? And how do we make sure that we practice what we preach when we actually move? So first things first was finding an office. So I was tasked with that lovely task. So we were looking for an office of about 4,000 square foot. One of the key things we were looking for as that search was done was offices that would potentially already work with their existing layout. So we didn't want to have to kind of, start again and have a huge refurbishment cost and, all of that waste. So we were really looking for office space that might work with the layout that was already there, and to kind of reduce time, reduce that impact of having that fit out, and just to kind of, make sure we were utilising space in the best way possible. So that was one of the key considerations when we were looking for an office space in the first place. So found this office in the middle of Shoreditch, and we first selected the office, negotiated the terms. We were lucky that the existing tenant was actually still in place, so we were able to liaise with them a little bit and identify potential things that we might want to retain, so they didn't have to do their full dilapidation process, which is what happens in most fit outs, that the existing tenant rips everything out, new tenant comes in having never engaged with them, and everything starts afresh, and you have that constant waste occurring in the cycle. So we were lucky to be able to kind of get in early and have those conversations about what we wanted to retain, and to reduce all of that waste, which was really good. So there was a lot of things already in place, which was quite good. Lighting, aircon, etc. Was already there, so we could kind of utilise those things, meeting rooms, that sort of thing. So once we'd secured the office, and the next task was to procure a fit out contractor. So it was a bit of a voyage of discovery for us. We hadn't done anything like it before. It certainly wasn't something that we had a great deal of expertise in. So we wanted to kind of take it as a bit of a collaborative journey, really, and looking for a fit out contractor that was going to kind of work a bit like a partner, really, in exploring this with us. And so we explained in our tender exactly the sorts of things that we were looking for to bring what circular economy meant to life, so reclaimed, refurbished, remanufactured, etc., so that they could kind of get a feel for what we were looking for. And we had a fit out budget of £200,000 plus 10,000 contingency. So we appointed a company called Action Workspace, and they'd done a few sustainable fit outs before, but nothing fully circular. So like I say, it was a little bit of a voyage of discovery for all of us. So this was the design that they came up with. We wanted to have space for us to work, have space for some SMEs to work, to utilise. So all of the meeting rooms that you can see on the left hand side were already in place. So we were able to utilise that existing layout. However, the bottom two meeting rooms were actually one large meeting room. We wanted to divide that into two so that we could have more meeting rooms basically rather than one large one. We wanted a big flexible working breakout space so that we could kind of come together and have more informal workspace. And we wanted to be able to kind of break out and have events and kind of host larger spaces, but also make sure we were utilising our space to the best possible ability. So rather than have kind of dead space that was event space, we wanted to be able to have the ability to clear space away. So all of the desks that you can see on the bottom right hand side are all flip tops, so that they could be moved out of the way, so that we could create a large space, so that we could kind of have big gatherings and things when we wanted to, but not have dead space in the office, which we were really conscious of. So as I mentioned, we were keen to utilise existing assets. So the meeting rooms were already in place, so we were able to use those. We just wanted to create a dividing wall in one of them. Things like the data cabling, the lighting, the aircon units, everything, we were able to utilise those. The kitchen was in a tiny little kind of alcove room, and we wanted the kitchen to be in a big breakout space, but the units and everything were all perfectly good condition, so we didn't see any reason why that should be wasted. So we asked the existing tenant to remove them really carefully so that they would be able to be used and we could reinstall them. And we also have loads of keen cyclists in our office, so we wanted to be able to use that little room to turn it into a shower room, because there wasn't enough capacity in the building for shower space. So that just gives you a little feel for the fact that we were able to turn that, the kitchen, remove the kitchen carefully. It did get a few eyebrow raises, but actually, you know, there was nothing wrong with it, and it was removed carefully and it was really good condition. So we turned it into a shower room and then reinstalled the kitchen where we wanted it in our new office space. And then that just kind of brings it to life a little bit more. So the breakout space that was sort of earmarked on the plan, the flooring for that, we wanted to create some interesting feature spaces and kind of, you know, make it quite a funky, I guess, cool space as well. And so we were able to source a reclaimed wooden floor from the Royal College of Surgeons, which was installed lovingly in that space. I think that was one of the key learnings for our fit-out contractor, was just how long that takes. It is quite a painful process, but it is a beautiful floor. So I personally think that's worth it. So here's a few shots of the office just to kind of bring it to life a little bit more, and then I'll go on to talk about some of the particular things that we sourced. So as I said, we were able to reuse things. So we reused quite a lot of the existing carpet. Not all of the tiles were great, some of them weren't. So we kind of went through and selected the ones that were really good and got rid of the ones that weren't. But that meant we were actually able to reuse quite a lot of the existing carpet, which I think is something that's very rarely done. But actually, you know, usually there's nothing wrong with it. We wanted a kind of hard wearing floor for the walkthrough. So we wanted kind of some sort of vinyl tile or something. And this was what we found quite difficult. there's a lot of claims on products that they are they either contain recycled content or claim to be cradle to cradle and things like that. But actually, when you test it with the suppliers, what can happen at the end of life, there were very few options other than incineration, and that really wasn't something that we wanted to do. And so it took us quite a while, but we were able to find this product supplied by Target that's a loose lay, so it's laid in the same way as a carpet tile, and it meant that it can be taken up at the end and then they can recycle it back in. So they've offered a take back scheme for that, so we were really pleased that they were able to offer that solution. So all of the reclaimed floor there you can see from a supplier called Glasgow. Interface, the carpet made from recycled fishing nets, and then Milliken and Target offering other carpet tiles containing recycled material and things like that. So a range, we wanted to have a bit of a showcase. So we could have just retained all of the existing carpet tile, but we wanted to use the office as a bit of a showcase of things that are possible to inspire people to do different things and to kind of approach things in different ways, just to kind of, get people thinking differently. So some of the suppliers that we used across the office, so a company called Adaptivate we used to create the wall. So as you can see in one of the offices, meeting rooms, so they have a plasterboard made from hemp and a plaster made from lime. And so we use that to create the division in our meeting room, and it's got really good sound insulation properties and everything, so it actually works really well. The lime is quite soft, so there was a slight challenge. It kind of chips a little bit easy, but also we had a very narrow meeting room, so I think that didn't really help the situation. But actually it's a really good product. It does take a little bit longer to work with than existing plasterboard, so that was something that our fit-out contractor had to kind of adapt to and learn how to use, because it isn't quite as straightforward as cutting existing plasterboard. So a little bit of learning there, but yeah, it's a product that worked really well. Ecor we use in a similar way, so it's an alternative to plasterboard, so we used it to kind of build out our storage space, and that is made from corrugated cardboard, and so again it's a kind of an alternative that you can use in spaces like that. Urban Rock, who unfortunately are no longer in business actually, but they were at the time, make worktops from recycled glass, and actually when we turned one of the meeting room into 2 meeting rooms, we took out a glass panel and donated it to them. So I can't guarantee it went into our exact worktop, but it definitely went into someone's. We also needed a little bit of extra kitchen space than the existing units that we were able to relocate. So we used the IKEA range that has recycled plastic content, and so that allowed us to have some kind of, that's our bin space. And then Smile Plastics, who create really lovely panels from recycled plastic. So the white's made from yogurt pots and all sorts of plastic they use to create really interesting different, some are kind of more like art pieces, but they have these two, the black and white range, and so we used it in a few places. So it's sliding doors, you can see it's the worktop on top of the IKEA range, and it's also the splashback there. We've also got it as a couple of tabletops as well. It's a really versatile product, and really nice looking, kind of a feature piece that's like a marble effect, so it's really nice. Furniture, so we had a range of different furniture options. So we worked with 2 key suppliers, a company called Premier Sustain and a company called Ripe Office, and they provided various elements. So for example, Premier provided the booths at the back, so they were upcycled existing bits of furniture that they were able to turn into these really nice booths to give us extra meeting space. The 2 green chairs that you can see, they also came from Premier, and the fabric that they used to refurbish them is from a company called Chimera, and so it's recycled yarn. Premier also provided our tables, so they are Herman Miller tables, so they're a kind of a well-known desk brand, and they were able to provide reclaimed ones for us at a fraction of the cost, so it's really good. Ripe Office provided a lot of the chairs, particularly the task chairs, the interstool chairs that you can see in the photo at the desks. And they are £800 new, and we were able to have them provided for about £250, so a massive saving. And it means you have a really good ergonomic chair, which is really important when designing a workspace. So it's a really good solution that is something that our fit out contractor has taken forward to other things that they're doing now, because it just is such a big saving, and it means that you can really kind of look after your workforce as well. The picture on the right hand side, so the table is supplied by, or the design, sorry, of the table is supplied by OpenDesk, so it's open source design. So you can then have the table manufactured locally to reduce all of those transport costs. And train spotters provide various reclaimed lighting. So the lighting you can see there came from, I think, a factory in Czech Republic or something originally, so something like that. So you can get some really interesting feature pieces if you just want to kind of make something a little bit more interesting and a bit more of a statement. So a couple of the challenges and things to kind of consider. So lead time of small suppliers can be long because they just don't have the capacity to manufacture at high volumes particularly quickly. So if you can give them notice as much as possible, then that's really helpful to allow them to plan and manage their stock. Also, stock of smaller suppliers can be smaller, so we need to support their growth, basically support these businesses to be able to kind of meet the demand as and when it comes. Sourcing the pre-used furniture to the right quantity and quality can be a bit tricky. So again, giving those suppliers enough notice of what you need to give them time to kind of prepare for it really helps. And being a bit flexible, you know, does everything need to match? Can you kind of make it more of a feature if you have things that are slightly different? And, you know, can you kind of approach the whole thing in a slightly different way? It's much cheaper, the furniture, but it does take longer to source, as I said. The contractors, obviously, a lot of these new materials, it takes them kind of time to understand how to work with them, and there are some challenges. And so I think one of the things we fed back to some of the suppliers was to make sure that they have installation guides, so that they make sure that they can kind of understand how these things can be installed quickly and give those guides. And just testing the end of life of products a bit as well. So where things are cradle to cradle, is that really true once they've been installed, and things like that. So just a couple of other things to mention from our side. We are involved in a Horizon 2020 project called Circuit, which is basically looking at different ways circular economy can be implemented in the built environment. So a few different things that they're looking at there, looking at reuse particularly, looking at transformation and regeneration of buildings, so to utilise existing assets, and also looking at design, so designing for flexibility, adaptability, that kind of thing. And so you can have a look at it. That, I'm assuming the slides are going to be shared afterwards. And one last thing from me is that next week we have our Circular Economy Week for London. So here's a couple of the events that are built environment themed, but there are a whole schedule of events, loads of things happening. So have a look and get involved, and sign up to things and join us virtually, please. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks, Jess. And can I just say, I love the prospect of a circular economy Eurovision. I need to find out more about that, because that sounds utterly brilliant.
It may not be quite as exciting as actual Eurovision, but it's showcasing different suppliers across Europe is the idea.
That's great. Well, thanks again for that, and we can chat Eurovision after, Jess. So I'd now like to hand over to Jo Jeffries from Jacobs. Jo is the Plan Beyond Engagement Manager for Jacobs, and will be able to share some of her insights and stories on how Jacobs are rolling out Plan Beyond, which is their sustainability strategy across the business. So Jo, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, same test with the, yes, I have control. Brilliant. Well, hello everyone, lovely to meet you. I'm Jo, I work for Jacobs. I am the Plan Beyond Engagement Manager. Plan Beyond is Jacobs' sustainability strategy, and I am really excited to be here right now. And if it's all right, I'm kind of going to like take us away from on the ground and maybe helicopter us up higher, because my role is to educate and engage people in the topic of sustainability. And I'd like to share with you how Plan Beyond has helped inspire, drive, push the idea of circular offices. And we in Jacobs use the word sustainability as a concept over circularity. So if I say sustainability or sustainable offices, it's all talking about circularity. So who are Jacobs? For those of you that don't know, we are a global solutions provider. We operate across so many different countries in the world. Our workforce numbers range somewhere between 52,000 and 55,000 at the moment. We have very ambitious visions and values, as you can see here: challenging today, reinventing tomorrow, to create a more connected, sustainable world. So it's written right in our vision, which is brilliant. And really this does set the scene and gives people permission to take this new approach and thinking differently towards creating a more sustainable and a better future for everybody. We touch on so many different sectors, primarily civil engineering, but loads of other areas as well. And that really gives us a brilliant grounding to make a positive influence and a big sustainability difference. So that's who Jacobs are. And here's Plan Beyond. So taking a step back a couple of years ago, we began this journey to create and forge a sustainability strategy. So we have a small but mighty corporate team that came together 2 years ago, and we did our materiality assessment, is the terms, which is essentially desk-based research to understand what all the different stakeholders would like to see from a sustainability strategy. What do they want Jacobs to focus on? So we went out and we spoke to our employees. So we did detailed phone interviews with specific people. We did a global survey where we, in an ideal world, would have loved to have all 52,000 people responding, but this is reality. So we had 10,000 people respond, which is, I think that's the second best take-up of a survey that our company has ever received. And at that point it was it was the second best, yeah, sorry. Trying to make it sound that we're better than we are. We spoke to our clients. So we did interviews with just more than 20 of our top clients across the globe. So in the UK, we spoke with Network Rail. I remember we're up there, Ministry of Defence, and then going wider, we spoke to NASA. We spoke to MI5, apparently the FBI, we do work for the FBI, very exciting, to understand what their visions were for sustainability. And in turn, that helped us forge our strategy. So you can see here from this wheel, it's split into three, which is our own spin on social, economy, and society. So we call it people, places, and partnerships. So those are our three pillars. And then underneath our three pillars, we have what look like petals, I like to think, in this flower diagram. So these are our focus areas, our 6 focus areas. And then when we launched this January last year, January 2019, we also kickstart by setting some really ambitious goals. So some of them were like removing single-use plastics, cutting travel emissions, launching new procedures, etc. And that really set us off on a great foot to start. But what these pillars and focus areas have really allowed us to do is kind of channel our thinking and give people permission and blessing to go forward, because it is supporting the Plan Beyond strategy, our sustainability culture. So that's kind of a bit of an overview. I guess it's also important to know that the UN SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, were thought about as well, and our first image of our wheel, our strategy, had them embedded within them. So yeah, they've been taken in consideration as well. So that's kind of a bit of an overview of how Plan Beyond came about and what it looks like visually. But now I just wanted to talk a bit about how Plan Beyond is influencing how our local offices operate. And primarily we're talking about how offices continue to operate in existing buildings. So we have over 200 offices across the globe. And I'll talk a little bit about how we help get offices starting up and sourcing new offices, but not in the detail that Jess did. I'm not going to go into that detail because I'm not involved in that stuff. She's the expert on this one. So we have local sustainability committees across our offices. They're volunteers. We encourage people to create committees. We support them. We provide them with FAQs to get started. We do regular calls with the network as a whole. We have an intranet space where people can collaborate, and we push out messages and we receive messages from them, and we all try and work together as a network, as a community. So that's one thing that we have and we encourage. Office sustainability plans. So what we have done is we've created a template for all of our offices to take, and we give them ideas as to categories that they should be working towards. So I scribbled down a few things earlier. So the categories are around consumables, energy, waste, furniture, IT, health and well-being, community, giving and volunteering. So really the whole aspect of sustainability, all those three pillars, the people, places and partnerships, not just the environmental aspects of things. So in addition to the office sustainability plans, or OSPs that we call them, we created a procedure to make it mandatory for every office to have one of these in place, and we're tracking that as well, and I'll show you a little bit about how we're tracking that. And then over and above that, we also have what do we call it, a new site checklist, and guidelines for when new offices are being seeked out, that these are kind of the checklists and the things that you should be looking to do, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. So one of the main things is removing SUPs. So we made it our goal to remove single-use plastics. We set that goal last year, and this is something that we're always have our eye on the ball. I could talk forever about how we've gone about doing this. The main thing that we did was reaching out with our real estate operations, so our facilities managers at a global level. And we worked with them to help us identify their top 3 SUPs that they think that they, as individuals, their facility leads in offices, would have the ability to change and influence. And what we're doing is we are tracking that. We're tracking how well they're doing to remove those top 3 SUPs. And when they've done that and they've sorted their top 3 SUPs, then we work with them and help them out with other types of SUPs. We also have strong connections with our company store, with our procurement suppliers. So we're kind of reaching out in lots of different ways. We're also giving people tools and engagement materials around how to drive behaviours, and that's on my next slide I'll show you. So the fourth one there is sustainable catering, which is obviously a huge part. We know that we cannot enforce people to stop bringing in plastic into the office, but we can do our damnedest to try and stop it from happening. So all around how we engage people to not bring plastic into the office. But we know we have a huge potential to alter what, meetings, how they're run, and who they use, and how they should be talking to the caterers as they come into the office. So we're trying to give people guidance, and people have asked for, can you give us a thank you note, or what things should we be asking? And so we say, well, number 1, ask them to not use single-use plastics. Number 2, can you give it back to them? Number 3, what are you doing with the leftovers? All those sort of things. So yeah, a big topic and theme there. So as I mentioned, we're a global organisation. Being a global organisation means you speak with people in different parts of the world, and as you can imagine, there are different cultural nuances. The Americans, for example, are awful for SUPs, and that is something that is a constant battle. We are really lucky that in our local sustainability committees in the States, the people who lead those are really savvy and clued up, and we try and support them as best we can to help change these behaviours. But yeah, just one to keep in mind, because it's a huge thing for Jacobs. Appreciate it's not the same in Glasgow or in other parts of the UK. And the final piece here I wanted to talk about was reward and recognition. So we run the CFO, that's our Chief Financial Officer, who sponsors these awards, the Sustainable Solution Awards. So every quarter, we award 5 submissions with a equivalent of $1,000 charitable donation to a cause of their choice. So this is really rewarding any sort of great sustainability practice, whether it's at an office level, a project level, an individual level. And this is something that we really keep on top of, and we drive and we communicate it. We communicate it from the top. And we think it's really important that the CFO sponsors this, because our CFO, Kevin, he's a big advocate of the triple bottom line. And so having his name tied to this really pushes that sustainability is important for everything across all aspects and across the bottom line. So just a few pretty pictures for you here. So I spoke about engagement in trying to reduce single-use plastics. So this is just a few examples of some posters that we provide to our employees. So the first one is trying to stop people from bringing in plastic cutlery to the kitchen. The second one is challenging people's behaviours around when they do a lunch order. Let's think about things differently. The long one in the middle, that's just a template for a roller banner. So some people have requested something big and striking that they can put in their receptions. So this is something that we created and made it available to them. And then the last one is just a generic, we have a goal to remove single-use plastics. On that last one, and actually the middle one, you'll see that we've really used striking imagery. This was, when we created these, it was last year, which is obviously a time where plastic pollution was very hot, a hot topic, and we knew that those imagery were grabbing people's attention. So yeah, the imagery choices there were deliberate. So I spoke a couple of slides ago about that we are tracking how our offices are doing, and we found that tracking is really, really driving behaviour change, and we are seeing a change because people know that we're tracking it. So this is a dashboard that our real estate operations look at. So this is our department for facility leads at a global level. You'll see at the bottom, we're split into regions. So that's adding a little bit of a competitive element. The numbers that it's tracking there are the OSPs, which is the Office Sustainability Plans. So we've made it mandatory, but we're tracking to make sure everybody has one. So there's a bit of competitive element, and they talk to each other and say, can I help? And I'll go, what are you doing? Why is that not at 100? That should be at 100, in a kind way, of course. And then what else are we tracking? We've got in the middle there, the percentage of offices with sustainability committees. And on the right, the percentage of offices that have removed cups. So this was really, we had to do a lot of background work to get to this point, but I think it's really important to show that to see behaviours, you need to be shown that you're tracking it and holding people accountable, and a little bit of competitive element always helps. And then to finish, I just wanted to show a local example. So this has actually come from Edinburgh. And what they did is they took their office sustainability plan and they tweaked it a little bit and added some dashboards to it. So at the top, those bar graphs are the categories of the ideas that we've given them. So we say, have you thought about changing this? And what they've done is they've ranked it whether they've done it. So those little line words there that you might not be able to see, it says whether something's implemented, in progress, possible, not possible, or unknown. And then the bigger dashboards at the bottom are just representing that, but in a different form. So the Edinburgh Sustainability Committee came up with this idea themselves, and we liked it, and we just made sure that we shared it. So we have regular internal calls, as I mentioned. So we featured them on one of the calls, put it up on our intranet so that everybody could grab it and people could pick up if they wanted to. But if they didn't, that's fine. They know it's there. So I guess just to conclude, I guess I was just keen to show that Plan Beyond as a strategy and a brand is really helping drive changes. And I think it's giving people a blessing to think about things in a different way. I also think what's keen is tools, materials. If you give people the stuff, then that is when you're going to see the changes. Tracking, as I said, tracking is really important. And rewarding good behaviours, sharing good behaviours and rewarding them as well. I think that's the key takeaways in the approach that Jacobs is taking, and we're starting to see real positive change after a year and a bit after launching Plan Beyond. So yes, that's all from me, I think. Hopefully that was useful.
That's great, thank you, Joan. That was really useful. I know we'll probably come back to that, but I'd like to just quickly hand back across to Spella and Claire, who I think will talk us through some top tips and a bit of an insight into their own workspace before we have a minute or two for questions at the end.
Couldn't unmute myself there.
Always helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, those were two really fabulous examples of different kind of circular office approaches, and kind of a lot of top tips actually came from that as well. So we'll just do our best to add to that. But before I sort of hand over to Claire to actually take you through the top tips that we had in mind, I just wanted to touch upon you know, the concept of circular office isn't just about the physical spaces that we are all very familiar with and yet haven't really been in for a couple of months due to obviously the world changing quite a bit, as you know, we know as usual. So you know, alongside the actual workspaces, we're also thinking about the ways that we work and how that impacts on the spaces that we're familiar with. So this is an example of what our office, Zero Waste Scotland kind of headquarters in Stirling, used to be. You know, many of us would have been through the changes, such as kind of transitioning from the individual workspaces to an open plan office, and which is what we had before as well, and what we still do, slightly different now. And so our office was quite fairly standard setup. You know, we had allocated desks, everyone had their own specific desk and allocated areas in the office as well. The storage in the office was mainly for sort of, you know, files and stuff that we all just have in the office that we don't really know what is there for sometimes. And, you know, while this office wasn't sort of changed for quite some time, our organisation was changing, and it was growing a lot. It continues to grow. So, but our space hasn't grown, and it's very limited. So we decided to adapt our office to, you know, not only adapt to these changes, but also to enable us to work differently to what we used to work like. So this is how our office looks like now, if I can still remember it. And what we did is we transitioned to agile working, which would be interesting to see how many of you are familiar with the concept, or potentially even have this sort of way of working in your own workplaces. But just as a kind of recap, you know, agile working means that we no longer view work as a place, as a physical place where we go to, but rather than, you know, it's an activity that we do, and more importantly, we can do it from anywhere. And while we still have our headquarters, and, you know, we renovated it and we upgraded it in a way that kind of was agile, flexible working, meaning that we have, instead of allocated desks, we have hot desking. So, you know, staff can come in and sit anywhere we like. We all have laptops as well, which enables us that flexibility and, you know, fluid movement around the office, not necessarily even having to you know, sit at a desk as such, but we have a lot of collaboration spaces and kind of breakout areas, as you can see, as well as some sort of private spaces for more sort of focused working where needed. And our storage has changed as well from, you know, we've sort of done a lot of clearing out and really moving to a kind of paperless based office, and we instead have staff lockers. So, you know, we take away the sort of bags and coats and things like that just lying around the office willy-nilly, but are neatly tucked away in specific areas. And more importantly, the staff, so we're all set up for working anywhere, which means that you know, our laptops, our IT, our software capabilities for calls and for file sharing are set up so that we can work from the office, from home, from a cafe, on the train, you know, wherever. That was kind of one of our main changes, and enable us to really, you know, not have to look for additional physical office space to accommodate the growing number of staff, but instead, you know, just do things differently, which has had positive impacts alongside of the obvious ones, but also the kind of staff time and the kind of balance of work and life. Of course, as we mentioned, as we're all very much aware of, the world has changed massively in the last few months, and Zero Waste Scotland, like many other organisations, we began the universal home working on 16th of March in response to the coronavirus pandemic, and we wanted to have a look at what the impact that the lockdown has had on our carbon footprint. And what we found is that under these new, quite drastic working conditions, our daily carbon footprint has fallen by an estimated 73% overall, compared to what used to be the sort of business as usual, working in an office. And this is mainly as a result of not having any commuting and corporate travel. At the moment, obviously, nobody's moving around anywhere. And this sort of 73% saving, or carbon saving, is an average between the 54% lower emissions during the heating months, which were, March, still say it was still a heating month. Obviously, we see a bit of a kind of heating rebound in the home working because more fuel is required in total to heat 150 or so individual homes rather than one office space. But we'll also see a 92% saving, which is very high and substantial, during the non-heating months. And again, this is mainly due to avoided corporate and commuting travel. Obviously, we appreciate this is very, unusual circumstances. We're never going to all work from home all the time. So even if we assume that there wouldn't be a change in corporate travel when we do return to the office at some point, we would still see savings between 30 and 65% carbon savings, which means that, regardless of the seasonal variations between heating and non-heating months and the corporate travel activity, home working still provides significant year-round carbon savings over the kind of business as usual working in an office. And it can really play an important role in the post-COVID recovery and resilience building. So we felt that was quite, it's an important kind of conversation to have at this time when we're thinking of what our new normal might be. So yeah, I'll pass over to Claire, where we'll ask you a bit about what you've been thinking potentially along these lines as well.
Hi, thanks very much, Bella. That was great. Yeah, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions here. I just need to minimize this. Right, okay. Yeah, we wanted to do a poll with you all to ask a couple of very topical, pertinent issues as obviously phase 1 in Scotland is being launched today and discussed of our gradual transition back to the new normal for now. So one thing that is foremost in, I think, everybody's minds really is how have social distancing measures, or how will social distancing measures and increased working from home impact on your office in terms of, your space solutions and how it will work for you? Will it impact extreme impact, very impact, moderately, slightly, or not at all? So that's just to get an idea. So if you could poll, it just gives us an idea of how much you're affected by this in terms of needing to implement social distancing measures and think about the number of desks and how you organise your workspace. Okay, has everybody taken part in the first question, the poll? I've got 9 of 20. I'll just give everybody a moment to vote because that's really, really helpful to see what the issues are for you.
Yeah, I think just while those are people are answering, just in terms of some of the questions, Fiona, I know that you've asked a question around the Chamber and sustainable suppliers. We can certainly come back to you on that. And I know there's been another couple of questions, one around the impact of COVID and guidance around things like single-use plastic or reusing items. So it'd be helpful if the panel could come back to us on that. And then there's a question for Jess around using recycled or circular materials more if they're more expensive, and a question around accreditation. So if people are okay just to stay on for another couple of minutes, we'll try and cover those questions off quickly, and for any we don't touch, we'll certainly follow up by email to you all.
Yeah. Just to come back, we've now got 95% voting. So yeah, a lot of people, okay, so it's a kind of even split between sort of extremely affected or very affected. So there's about 65% of people polled are impacted by this and need to plan this right now. What I would say is that we're really interested to hear from you directly, and this is an issue that we're looking at across the circular cities and regions areas, because obviously it's affecting everyone, and we're having conversations with suppliers who can offer remanufacturing solutions to refurbish existing furniture, for example, which I'll touch on in a moment, to help with that, so that you don't need to throw out excess furniture, but you can in fact repurpose it for reuse. So the second question is, are you downsizing, renovating or relocating premises in the future? And again, this may be a consequence of the impacts from COVID. So again, there's a poll, and if you could participate in the poll, that would be great.
I think most people have responded to that question as well.
Well, have they? Sorry,
yeah, so
I've lost the poll.
They've replied to both.
I've actually lost the poll image from my.
Oh, right.
Oh yeah, no, it's come back. I lost it. That's why I had. Okay. Great. Okay. So sorry about that. So 70% are going to be home working, more home working in future. No, that's great. That's really handy to know. Okay. So quickly, I will move on to some top tips and some ideas really. So the first one I want to talk about was fixtures and fittings, and by this I mean your kind of furniture, your carpets, your kind of blinds, etc., and the space partitions, etc. This will be an area where it sounds like a lot of people will be looking at this, how to repurpose what they currently have in the office for home working, how to reuse what you've got, how to adapt the deep cleans that will be required. These topics have been coming up at the moment. There's just a few things that I wanted to discuss. I'll focus on furniture because that's been coming up a lot in discussion recently. And just to emphasize that you can work with local suppliers. There are a number of local suppliers out there across Scotland who could help with refurbishing your existing furniture and repurposing it so that it could be redeployed for home use, the increased home working, rather than sort of rushing out and having to buy new furniture and the additional cost of that, but then also the additional carbon footprint of that on your overall footprint, because then, what you do with all those extra assets is, can you, if you have extra furniture and chairs in your office space because you need to set out 2 meter distance apart, can you redeploy that furniture for home workers? So that's the kind of first thing I was going to look at. Another thing that came up yesterday, which I thought was of great interest, is material type. So thinking about cleaning, it's coming up that there may be some challenges around fabric covered items as opposed to, say, wood, which is easier to clean. So just thinking as well, if you are considering or needing to buy some new furniture because you don't have enough, or you can't cover all your requirements, do start thinking about the material type, what it's made of, its ease of repair, how it's designed to disassemble for ease of cleaning, and also just ease of parts and warranty as well. So they're kind of key things to think about at the moment, conscious I don't have lots and lots of time. What I would say is, if you're redesigning your office, and it sounds like a number of you are sort of looking at different things, make sure you include your circular office objectives in your brief. Make sure you give them a significant weighting and criteria for your contractors so that they know that you're serious about your ambitions and what you need to do, and it's not just a nice to have. because then if it's viewed as a nice to have, time and logistics might take over with that and it might get overlooked. So that's just a key point with that. Another point I would make is there is brilliant green public procurement criteria, EU criteria, to help you with purchasing and circular purchasing that's already out there and being created, and we can provide the link to that. Looking at IT equipment as well, you need to look at that, and laptops. I was just looking yesterday at the new EU guidance on computers, and the greatest impact overall and the life cycle impact is how long they're in use for. So one top thing to look at is optimize how long your IT equipment is in use. So typically refresh cycles tend to be about 3 years. If you can extend that to 5 years, that has a massive impact on your carbon footprint. You can help to keep them in use as long as possible by making sure that when you specify for manufacturers and buying new, that they're easy to repair and maintain and replace and upgrade components. Again, it all comes back to good design that makes it easy for you to keep them in use as long as possible and optimize their specification by being able to replace components as well. Repair provides obviously good local opportunities, jobs as well. There's a repair industry in Glasgow, so there's lots of opportunities there. Sorry, I've been asked to wrap up very quickly. What we say is there's lots of these top tips are in the Circular Office Guide, so we will send that out as well. The only other one I was going to look at, I think, was around sort of food as well, but that's less relevant at the moment because obviously a lot of people are going to be home working. All I'll say there is we run a campaign on reducing food waste, and we can absolutely help people with top tips of what to do with leftovers to reduce food waste at home. And I'll just sort of finish it there. I'll just show you the other ones if I can. Yeah, okay, so these were just the areas, but you know, we're running short on time and want to allow enough time for questions and discussion. So I'll just finish it there, and please ask questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Claire. And yes, we'll certainly share all the slides with everyone after and share the Circular Office Guide just so that people can see them. Just very quickly, there's just I suppose 2 key questions and then I'll wrap up, just because I'm conscious that we have run over slightly. First, I suppose it was to come back to the sort of first question for Jess around the use of materials. In terms of, you know, using circular or recycled materials, you know, is it more expensive? You know, how can you change consumer behaviour or client behaviour? To just, you know, in a quick sort of 30 seconds, if you have a bit of a response for that, Jess.
So in terms of furniture, a lot cheaper. So furniture is definitely a no-brainer. Materials, they were more expensive, and that is largely down to manufacturing scale, because they just, at the moment, small businesses are, you know, manufacturing, aren't able to manufacture at scale, so you don't get those kind of economies of scale that you get. Products like plasterboard are incredibly cheap, but really bad for the environment. So until things kind of right themselves a bit more in how costs are represented, it is challenging. But I think, you know, if you get clients that are keen to push this agenda a little bit, then I think it's really good if you can work with them to do that.
Brilliant. And then finally, if I could just ask for, I suppose, one top tip from everyone in terms of how, when people are going back to the workplace, what change they can make that might sort of benefit from a circular point of view, but also from a social distancing. And if I could ask you all to do that in, you know, 20 seconds or less, just to put a bit of pressure on you.
I'll jump in. Really simple. Cycle, if you can. Social distance, fitness, health, if you can.
Thanks, Jo.
I'm a cyclist.
Agile working for me. So I should have said when we did ours, we operate a hot desking policy as well, quite an extensive one. So yeah, supporting that and allowing people to work from home more means you've got less pressure in the office, which means you can socially distance in the office better if you need to when you return.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think for just a summary of everything that's been said, that just always remember that, you know, someone else's waste might be a resource for you and vice versa. You know, don't just straight away trying to buy something new. There's so much to be made with what's out there, and there's going to be a lot of items, furniture and otherwise available for reuse or repurposing.
Right, that's great.
Yeah, for me, I was just going to say furniture. For me, there was an article in The Guardian last week about the risk of a furniture mountain occurring from people disposing of excess office furniture. So please think carefully about it. Reuse, refurbish, redeploy your furniture. That would be my plea.
Great, thank you. Well, as I say, we'll follow up specifically with some of the questions not answered, and we'll certainly share the slides, but all that remains is to say thank you for those who've been able to stay on. We did run over slightly, so thank you to everyone that's joined, and we'll follow up, and have a good afternoon and morning to everyone. Thanks, bye now.